Independent RX Forum is sponsored by Wellgistics Health. Welcome to Independent RX Forum with the National Community Pharmacists Association, America's leading advocate and business education provider for independent community pharmacists. Independent RX Forum is powered by RX Connection.
Hello and welcome to Independent RX Forum. I'm your host, John Beckner, and I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, Mr. Ed Cohen.
Hello, John. Great to be with you today. And we look forward to another robust discussion about pharmacy practice today.
Before I introduce our guest and the topic, I want to remind folks that we are live streaming from the NCPA annual meeting in Columbus, Ohio. Just looking out over the exhibit floor, it looks like it's a busy floor. We're off to a good start. The grand opening was, I guess, maybe a little over an hour ago, and we're really excited to have everybody here in Columbus. And I'm really excited to introduce our next guest. Today we've got Meredy Ayers. Meredy is a certified pharmacy technician with Bremo Pharmacy in Richmond, Virginia. And we also have Jake Galdo. Jake, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's like a nesting doll, a bunch of different hats that I wear, right? So from a technician perspective, I help train community health workers. And we use that as CPS and health equity, where I'm the managing facilitator to transform pharmacy practice.
Awesome. And I want to talk a little bit about community health workers in that health equity program a little bit later. But what we really want to focus on is the return on investment, the ROI, if you will, of support personnel, of which technicians are critical to the support of pharmacies. And Meredy, you've really been a role model in terms of what you've done as a pharmacy technician. You've really taken advantage of a lot of opportunities that have come your way. And I think it would be really interesting for our listeners and viewers to maybe share a little bit about your journey and how you got interested in being a technician and what you've done along the way.
Sure. So my journey started as the after-school high school job in 1998. I can't believe I'm saying that. But I'm from a little town in Virginia, Orange, Virginia. And so we had an after-school job. It was the pharmacy. It was the hardware store. I chose the pharmacy. Was there for a long time during high school, and then, moved to Richmond in 2002 to go to VCU, music school. And independent pharmacy is a small world. So the owner of the pharmacy I was working at in Orange knew the owner of a pharmacy in Richmond. They went to school, or one taught the other in school, pharmacy school. So I went there and got my tech license in 2003 or 4 and CPHT through PTCP. And I remember back in high school, the pharmacist, also owner, everybody knows everybody in my little town, by the way. Everybody knows.
Sounds like the town I grew up in.
Yeah, everybody knows everybody. And I was working, I think that the Tuesday afternoon after school, and a lady came in that I just knew. And she did come over to the counter where I was at. She went over to the pharmacist at the other end, and there was discussion. He handed her a bag of meds. She handed him a check, and they left. And I was like, that's interesting, but none of my business. And the owner came over to me and said, you know what? There's some things we just do because we're part of the community. And what happened was she wasn't able to pay that day. Her check wasn't going to clear until Friday when she got paid. Mm-hmm. And that was the second I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I didn't want to be a pharmacist, and I knew I wanted to help people. So when I came to Richmond, I had nothing but amazing mentors. Throw out some names: Ron Davis, Cindy Warner, all those guys were in the beginning. And so I thought it would be amazing to be the technician role model, not just have the pharmacist role models out there, even though I've had amazing ones. I've had John Beckner. So I want to be that person for some of the people. And that brought it into, I worked for that independent pharmacy for 10 years and then moved over to Bremo Pharmacy. And I've been there 10 years as of 2 weeks ago, and had nothing but amazing. I've had autonomy is what it is. I've been given the autonomy to kind of move around where I want to go and within parameters, obviously, and had opportunities to sit on the State Board Association and work with NCPA quite a bit, which has been awesome, and work with Jake over here with some CHW training. Did my training with Jake as a CHW.
And that's been awesome too, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. If anything, entertaining and educational. And with all of that information and education, I decided during COVID, not that we got the break as other people did, that I was like, let me go ahead and go for my advanced technician credentials with PTCB. And I did. And I had done it 2020 and encouraged other people to do it because they really have things that I was looking for to enhance what I was doing already. And it's helped me build more relationships and do more with that. So people realize that being tech's not just a job, it's a career move. And really, we're not behind the pharmacists. We're not, we're beside them now.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So.
Well, I know one of the things that you've are now trained to do is to administer immunizations. I can speak to that from a personal standpoint, and you do a very good job.
I'll say,
You have both arms.
so you're the one that calls John and invites him to come and get his shot.
That's not it. Services right there.
Wow, John. You know it's all.
Never has to wait alone.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later in the podcast. But Jake, one of the all pharmacies really have to take a close look at their bottom line these days. Reimbursement is not getting any better. In fact, it's getting worse. Product reimbursement, that is. And so I think people really need to take a critical look at their expenses, of which, staffing is probably the main expense. So I know you've done some studies about the ROI of support personnel, which technicians, community health workers. Can you talk about that? What have you uncovered with regard to that?
Thanks, John. And, it's kind of funny because we emphasize, and when we do presentations together, we can talk about this topic, to me, words matter. Words are very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And if I say, what's the ROI? We think of that as a return on investment. Great. We love return on investments, but a person's not an investment. A person is a person. And so the first thing that you have to do is reframe the problem that we're talking about, right? And the reframing of the problem is that I want a return on an investment in a business unit, or I want to look at starting a new service, and then service may have a return on investment, right? I think about stocks as a return on investment, but I don't think about the CEO running the company that I have the equity in as a person that I need an ROI of. So I think we need to kind of change the vernacular a little bit and start talking about how I start a service or how I critically evaluate a service and change the profitability of it. And the profitability is a marker of the return on investment. So I'm not discounting that aspect of it. But if I look at your question, how do I dispense drugs and get a better ROI? That's not really what we're thinking about, honestly, because ROI means I sold my store. That's not what I want to do. I want to help my community, help my patients. And so instead, the question is, how do I make dispensing drugs more profitable? And that's the crux of it. And so to your point, drug costs can't really change that unless we look at inventory turns according to DuPont models of accounting. So instead, we look at staffing costs. And there's two ways that we could approach it. We could just pay less, which is not what I'm encouraging or talking about here. Or we look at the business unit and say, how do we make the business unit more profitable, which is by optimizing other support staff in the pharmacy to do the roles to drive down the cost of the operations. And so, using our vaccinations as an example, if we have a pharmacy and they do 100 vaccines, more often than not, they're hopefully profitable on that if the pharmacist administers all of them. We've seen some scenarios where they're not profitable if the pharmacist administers 100 vaccines. If we change that model and have half the vaccines administered by the technician, which is what Meredy's doing, the profitability of your immunization service increases by 65%.
Wow.
Significant. That's the significant thing that we're talking about. You invest in the person to do the skill set to make the service more profitable, which does help with the ROI, but that's not really the calculation that we do immediately.
So when you're talking about immunizations, a lot of pharmacies, your current pharmacy does a lot of off-site flu clinics.
Yeah.
So those are large numbers. So to be able to use a technician to help with those clinics certainly makes a lot of sense.
Huge difference. And going out to those, I mean, to have 2 cars pulled from your business to go do those, because you generally need 2 people doing this. That's huge, because then you're missing another piece somewhere else. And so to go with, we do have a pharmacist, we have to be with them, I have to be with a pharmacist, but the numbers that we can do and still provide quality, unmatched. So, and then if you have, what we did yesterday is our action item at the end. We talked about, while you're here at the meeting, is there a new service that you're looking at? Is somebody presenting you with something new that you as the owner, does that need to be you implementing that? Or do you have a technician that could really support staff of some sort that could be implementing that for you? Does it have to be you or the pharmacist? And taking a look at that, and then really analyzing the numbers on that, then see where your pharmacy lands.
Well, we talk a lot about practice change, and certainly part and parcel to practice change with providing services is the need to expand the role of the technician. And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Right. Professional development's huge. There's some technicians like myself and others that I know that invested in themselves because they wanted to. Mm-hmm. And now we need to really kind of get a cheering squad there to get the other ones going as well, to show them there's other possibilities.
But I think, one of the crux of this, though, is that technicians can do everything, right? Let them be engaged. So if you have someone that's producing a prescription and that's what they want to do, let them run out on that, right? It's like the movie Ratatouille, right? Anyone can be a chef, but not anyone should be a chef.
Exactly.
Right? Yes. And so that's the premise here. Anyone can do anything in the pharmacy, but we might not want everyone doing everything. So specialization, let them take ownership of something. Take diabetes self-management education. Historically speaking, we think that's only the pharmacist delivering that when it's a pharmacy-based DSME program. But a community health worker can also deliver that. So if you cross-train your technicians or your delivery drivers as a community health worker, the profitability of a DSME service doubles. Because the highest cost of a DSME service is the salary of the person administering the education. And what happens if we change from a pharmacist at $60 an hour to a technician at CHW at $30 an hour? And I use that model specifically. One, the profitability just doubled, right? Because your salary cost got cut in half. But I'm also highlighting the fact that the technician is making $30 an hour, which is great for them, entertainment and job growth and career aspirations. They are now part of the company.
Yeah. So I sit in on your presentation yesterday. It's very good, by the way. And something that you said really resonated with me because you mentioned it several times, not only in the course of the presentation, but also in addressing questions. And that was path versus ladder. Correct. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's really breaking the old mindsets where all of us are really used to, is maybe like a pay tier. Like you're climbing up a ladder and it automatically comes with an extra pay, right?
Yeah.
And at some point there was something to be said about that. But a pathway is really where it is. And it goes back to have them find what it is they're invested in and have ownership of. That automatically, you have return on your investment. And also it's a specialization that will bring in the revenue, and you can see the dollars that you can now pay. And you're not looking at the 5 steps you're making on a prescription. And it's a different way to look at it. We're going out, we're branching out, we're not going up necessarily. Maybe going up in our professional development, we're going up. We could potentially move up, but the intention is to branch out and learn more and do more.
And that also speaks to job satisfaction, correct?
Turnover is tremendous.
Tremendous.
Lowering turnover.
So let me flip the coin for a second. And so I'm got Ed's Pharmacy, and I've never done any of what you're talking about. And I personally am a little skeptical about allowing other ancillary help take on these roles and responsibilities in my store. I've never done it. I'm a little nervous. So what is your message? How do you address Ed in Ed's Pharmacy to embrace these new concepts, change the way he's doing business? And Jake, you've seen this struggle with some of CPESN and the transformation of pharmacies from their model to the other model. And this is not an easy task. And it does take time. It does take resources to educate and train and change the business model. So how do you start with Ed
And
I
could
could
this,
Meredy, and I hold dibs on this one first, even though you probably have good insights. So I want to put my business hat on, right? Because that's ultimately what you're asking. You're asking a business question. And I think that there's a thing that we have to recognize about ourselves. We're treated as clinicians, as healthcare providers. Yeah, we're running a business. And honestly, many of us were in pharmacy school and never had a business class, right? I went through all of pharmacy school and never had accounting. So we have to put on a business hat, not a clinician hat. As a clinician, I don't want to give anything away. But as a business owner, I need to start to think about it and changing. And so I go to organizational change management in the literature, because it's evidence-based, and I think about John Kotter. John Kotter said that for us to have successful organizational change, there's like 8 steps. And the first step is creating a sense of urgency. And that sense of urgency is paramount to good organization change. Most organizations do not change successfully because they haven't established their sense of urgency. That's the number one step. So, Ed, I would start with finding out what your sense of urgency is. Is it because you don't have enough money for payroll? Is it because you didn't pay your salary because you don't have money? Or is it because your significant other at home is mad that you're working 70 hours a week? I don't know what your sense of urgency is, but I need to find that first. And then I hone in on that and say, how do we address that issue by looking at your team, your organization, and make change to make it effective? It's so funny when you talk to pharmacy owners and they say, I really want to be like Chick-fil-A, where everybody says, thank you and please. Like that's the mantra that we all get, right? Mm-hmm. But then how many pharmacy owners pick up the phone and they're like, this is Ed, what do you want? You're the one that's not doing it, so why is anyone else going to do it? And I think we need to think about that. And we need to put our business hats on and take the emotion out of it, which is so hard.
very difficult.
I would 1,000% agree with that. And before you have any conversations, take the emotion out of it first, because emotion is going to come into it later on, I promise. But and then seeing what other people are interested in doing, because like he said, somebody's completely fine. Maybe big bottle, little bottle, as Jake always says. Some people are perfectly happy doing that, and that still needs to happen. But finding somebody who's maybe you're looking into a marketing position or looking into, like we talked about yesterday, compression or full equipment, or then they have a passion for helping people doing specific things like that. They just need to learn more. Taking some time out of the week and doing that. But to ease your mind as the owner, seeing the follow-up and educating these people on the business aspect of it, because a lot of us come into this without that background. I mean, you guys came into this without that background. So technicians don't always have that background either. I'd say probably more so than not. Mm-hmm. But explain that to them and say, here's what I'm looking for. Here's maybe some KPIs I'm looking for, and report back to you in this amount of time and set those expectations so you have a solid grounding and expectation, and they do too. That communication's clear. And you have some meet-up time, some match-up, and you're going to hopefully get there.
And you have to give them the time. I was talking to a pharmacy recently that was doing a lot of the change management with CPSN with us. They had trained CHWs. They were ready to go. And it was 3 months. They said, it's not really working. Can you meet? We don't really go out one-on-one, but I was like, I know you. I'll leave with one-on-one. Let's chat. And I said, how often is your CHW off the bench? And they went, oh, never. They got work to do. And it's like, well, then that's why you're not changing. You got to give them time, 4 hours a week, just to get away. And then from a financial model, 4 hours a week, that's only 10% of their salary. We can have that wiggle room, take that out of the marketing budget, and let them go forth and market in a different way.
Yeah. I think one of the one of the silver linings of COVID was it accelerated the development of ancillary personnel to do different things. And I think, and that's hopefully will continue because we need it to.
That's a must to do.
So thank you both for being on the NCPA podcast. It's been our pleasure to have you on. Anything you'd like to add as we close, share with our viewers and listeners? We covered a fair amount of ground.
Say our closing line yesterday is more advanced support staff is a safer pharmacy. So,
and more support staff was a more profitable pharmacy, which ultimately is a better pharmacy.
So dynamic combination, safer and more profitable.
Yeah.
And retention with what you're able to do and job satisfaction. Yeah. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.